Hey everybody, just wanted to share a suburban permaculture design that I did for a home in southwestern Ohio. It's in USDA Hardiness Zone 6A. They don't have an HOA in this neighborhood, but they do have a set of covenants and restrictions that talk about livestock, and we're going to try to sneak some livestock in, some kind of chickens and rabbits, things that aren't too noisy. Obviously, we won't be putting a rooster in, but also they have, just from a landscaping perspective, they have this clause in there about unsightliness. So it's really subjective. They don't really feel like any of the neighbors would have any sort of problems with the wild of permaculture, but they also want to just try to keep the front yard looking somewhat like your normal suburban house. So with that backdrop, the first thing that probably sticks out is, if you look relative to the house side, how big the lot is. Like I said, it's 2 acres. The biggest unfortunate part is that the leach field from the septic system is probably in the worst spot that it could be in from a permaculture perspective. Zone 1 is going to be obviously mostly right around the house, but that's a big Zone 2 area for me, and it's kind of one of the flatter spots. So one of the things that we're definitely going to have to do at a pretty significant expense, probably about $5,000 based on one estimate, is to move this septic system further out so that we can reclaim this area here to do the earthworks and a lot of the food forestry that we want to do. A couple of the main concerns are food security, water security, energy security, manageable maintenance, and minimal outside inputs. The topology of this site is relatively flat, although as you can tell from the topographic lines here, the elevation drops about 8 feet from the house to the end of this property. Now you see the sector analysis, pretty basic from this area. There's no super notable features. The summer sun and the winter sun obviously drawn to the south. The summer wind comes from due west here, prevailing wise, and then the winter wind comes a little more from the northwest and is fairly strong. This area is at the top, one of the higher points in the county, and it's just kind of always windy here. There's a neighbor to the north who, due to the layout of the neighborhood, their house is set behind this property, which causes somewhat of a privacy issue. The flow analysis is pretty straightforward. The blue lines with arrows are the direction of water moving across the property. There are downspouts from the eaves troughs here, 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 and here. You can see where they run to. All of the downspouts, except for the one that runs under the deck, are underground and come out of the ground and eject the water about where you see the arrows here. The green flow lines are indicating the foot traffic. The house structure, including the attached garage, has enough water catchment to get about 46,000 gallons of water per year. Another interesting water feature of this house is the whole neighborhood, all of the neighbors have the same issue, that the sump pump system in the basements of their houses are never dry. So even during almost drought conditions in August, there are periodic ejections from the sump pump out the pipe that comes from this side of the house and runs underground all the way to the end of the property. So one of the things we're going to do to make use of that resource is we're going to put a 300-gallon water bladder underneath this deck, and we're going to have a diversion valve, so as long as that thing's not full, it's going to get filled up with the water from under the house. There are also some rain barrels that we'll put with first flush systems at each one of the downspouts from the eaves troughs. Here is your zone 1. The deck area, the plan for that area includes an herb spiral with a water feature just off the deck by the stairs on the south side. The herb spiral will contain cilantro, coriander, mint, parsley, chamomile, chives, sage, oregano, thyme, anything else that the homeowners want. And the water feature will be just a really small pond used to grow watercress. There'll also be two 4x8 raised beds there to be used as the primary kitchen garden. If they want, we also have suggested some container plants to grow on the deck itself. On the front of the house, that's really where the ornamental landscaping is, at least now. We're going to continue to make this area attractive from the normal suburbanite standards, but we're going to mix in some edibles within that space as well. We're going to use two different varieties of blueberry added to that. Blue Etta, which is an early variety, and Patriot, which is an early to mid variety. We'll provide soil amendments of pine needles, composted pine bark and stuff when planting the blueberry bushes to help raise the acidity of the soil. And then we'll mulch it with the same stuff to just kind of help keep that acidity level up as time goes on. We're going to add some colors to using Echinacea, bee balm, which both provide medicinal qualities along with being outstanding beneficial insect attractors. And we'll put some ground cover on there of alpine strawberries to add to the site's edible plant list. On the south side, we're going to plant a Nanking cherry hedge, just as the landscaping to get rid of the non-productive bushes that are already there. That'll provide a really good bounty of delicious cherries, but they're going to need to keep it a little more trimmed than you normally would, just so that it has that more kept look for the suburban neighborhood. The prunings will make great green manures for chop and drop, as well as other areas in the site, so just throw them in the wheelbarrow and move them out where you need them. And then from a ground cover perspective, there'll be some creeping thyme there, as it can handle the shade when the cherry hedge gets at its full foliage, as well as it can handle pretty light foot traffic whenever they're reaching in to harvest the cherries. The north side of the house sees a lot of shade. Family isn't willing to put like a shade house over there with venting to help with the climate control, just because of the concern about the sightliness. So we're just gonna mix in possibly some edibles with the ornamental landscaping that's real shade tolerant on that side. Things like bok choy, maybe kale, some parsley. Next we have Zone 2, which is all of the yellow area that you see in both the front and the backyard. You can see there's a lot of activity here, especially in the backyard of Zone 2, but we're going to start at the beginning in the front yard of Zone 2. So we're going to have a bur oak as the centerpiece of the front yard. The oak tree is going to provide acorns once it matures, which they can use as nut flowers and will help draw in wildlife. The two other major functions of this tree in this location are to provide shade to keep the house cool in the summer and to protect the front door and the front of the house in general from the wear and tear of the beating sun and the rain. It'll also provide a lot of organic matter in the fall for use in composting and mulching. We'll companion plant minimally around here, but minimally for a bur oak is quite a bit. So we'll have things like comfrey, garlic, greater plantain, and daikon radishes. Also in Zone 2, just on the edge, is the existing plum tree. We're just going to add some support species of comfrey and chives for that. Now looking at the backyard portion of Zone 2, there's going to be a series of 3 swales. Each one of those will have a ditch 4 feet across and just under a foot deep. In each of those ditches, we're going to plant some dynamic accumulators like chickweed, comfrey, and daylilies. Those are going to help pull up the deep nutrients that can then travel down the system for the other plants to use as we do things like chop and drop. We'll also plant a good amount of daikon radishes and winter peas there for just normal support species. And then mixed amongst the trees and support species that we'll talk about here specifically, we're just going to add rock groupings all over just to give some habitat for snakes and lizards and toads and any other beneficial animals that want to hang out in those areas. So the first swale, as you move away from the house, is 37 feet long. It's going to catch the water that exits the downspouts from the garage eaves trough, and that exits the ground, the underground piping at about the area shown with my cursor here. On the uphill side of the swale, just above the water edge, we're going to plant a narrow crop of asparagus. And then on the swale mound, we're going to plant 2 blackberry bushes and 1 raspberry bush. Interspersed with these berry bushes, we're going to put some daffodils and hollyhocks, which we'll do chop and drop on again, just to help bring those minerals and nutrients to where the berry bushes can get at them, as well as providing a pleasant view. And then for ground cover in that area, we're going to use mint and chickweed. Chickweed already grows in that area a lot, and the homeowner's been fighting it for a long time. In between the first and second swale is the big area that's going to be just the normal annual vegetable garden. That's going to be about 1,100 square feet. They can plant their annual crops for any sort of selling or preserving, canning. They can grow tomatoes, squash, green beans, cucumbers, cabbage, corn, and whatever else they want in that area. Take advantage of the water nutrient storage of the swale system. If they need supplemental irrigation, they always have that water that's in Zone 1 in the rain barrels, as well as in the water bladder that's stored under the deck. Additionally, we're going to have them tractoring chickens and rabbits through this area when appropriate. The nutrients, obviously, from the animals' manure will make their way through both the garden and into the subsequent swale system, and help to feed the nutrients to the downstream plants. Support species for this area will be just buckwheat and hairy vetch. The second swale is 70 feet long. We're going to plant a standard size golden delicious apple at the northmost point. As a vining fruit for that tree, we'll later add a hardy kiwi. Two semi-dwarf peach trees are going to flank a high bush cranberry, as you can see. In the southmost position on the swale, we're going to plant 2 raspberry bushes. For ground cover, we'll use nasturtiums, both the stem type and the vining type. They have some anti-pest properties, plus they'll bring color, and they have sweet edible flowers that most people don't take advantage of, but they're really good. Other support species in that second swale area are going to be marigolds, chicory, basil, greater plantain, and garlic. In between the second and third swales is the primary chicken and rabbit tractoring area. It's basically pasture. So the family's interested in protein production. With the right birds and rabbits, they can get a significant portion of their protein right in their backyard with minimal disturbance and little or no unsightliness, given that they build nice chicken coop, nice rabbit hutch, and tractoring implements. So we're going to just seed that area with perennial red clover and buckwheat. They're both dynamic accumulators, and rabbits and chickens love them. The third swale is the biggest. It's 80 feet long. We're going to plant a black walnut tree at the northernmost point. The nuts from that tree will be a great source of protein once it matures, as well as it offers opportunity for nut oil production. In the northern subcanopy of that large tree, though, we're going to put 2 shade-tolerant fruit bears, pawpaw and an elderberry bush. Pawpaws are just delicious. Getting those things to grow and getting the fruit is like a birthday present and a Christmas present all rolled up into one. The tree to the south of the walnut is a standard size Bing cherry tree, and then we're going to put 2 more pawpaw trees in there around the next large tree on that swale, which is a beautiful day mulberry tree. It's a white variety, and the reason that one is good is it helps prevent that staining from the bird droppings that inevitably happen when you have a mulberry tree on your property. So the last tree on that swale is a semi-dwarf 3-in-1 cherry tree. It has 3 different kinds of cherries. We'll add a male and female hardy kiwi there as well. Those can make use of the strong trees for vining, and they taste delicious. And we're going to use the same ground cover there as we did in the second swale. So the support species for this area, though, are horseradish, comfrey, greater plantain, and red currants. On the north side, we're going to add a hedgerow for that privacy factor. It's going to consist of alternating American hazelnuts or filberts and Montmorency cherry trees. The Montmorency cherry, it'll produce great pie cherries, those nice sour red ones. And the American hazelnut or filbert tree will produce abundant yields of the highly sought after hazelnuts. Along the back side of Zone 2, though, is another hedge. That's this one right here. But this time we're just using 3 small gumi trees. Those trees will finish off adding that extra privacy on that part of the site, as well as providing a large yield of pretty delicious fruit. We're also going to just add an echinacea patch out in front to draw in more pollinators and provide support functions. The support species other than echinacea are comfrey and horseradish. Zone 3 on the north side of the front yard, we're going to install a Colorado blue spruce tree guild. The center of this guild is obviously the blue spruce tree. We can coppice the pine branches for use in mulching around the other blueberry bushes we've talked about. Around that spruce tree we're going to be putting 10 lingonberry bushes. Lingonberries aren't really widely known, but they produce a wonderful cranberry-like fruit. We're going to take further advantage of the acidity provided by the spruce tree by planting that early blueberry. On the south side of Zone 3 in the front yard, the dying ash tree is going to be removed. We're going to replace it with a new plum tree that'll serve as a pollinating partner with that current plum tree. So they should finally get some fruit from both of them in the coming years. The new plum tree will also serve as an additional privacy screen from the road for the backyard. New support species added to that existing plum tree, as well as the new one will be comfrey and white clover. We'll add a small terrace to the center of the southwest Zone 3 area. On this terrace we're going to plant a pear tree guild with a standard Bartlett pear and an Orient pear as its pollinating partner. We're going to tuck a gumi in between them for more delicious fruit, and to add as a connecting screen for that little added privacy from the road while in the pool. We'll add some echinacea for all the stuff we talked about earlier from support species, as well as it giving a nice splash of color in the front yard. On the back side of that guild we're going to plant comfrey and chives. And then for ground cover in that whole area we'll use white strawberries just to add more edibles, and it's a nice sightly looking thing to add to the landscaping. And then just southeast of that terraced area we're going to place a dwarf apple tree guild with Red Delicious and Honeycrisp apples. We'll take care of the ground cover there with creeping raspberries and add some red currants, chives, and garlic as far as support species. The area to the southeast back here, we're just going to make that a large bee and butterfly garden. So we'll put a kind of wildflower pasture mix in this area just to help attract those pollinators and help to give them some relief from all the neonicotinoids and other pesticides that'll be being sprayed in all of the lawns around them. And you can see Zone 4 here. Zone 4 is going to be used to build nutrients for the system as a whole, as well as to provide firewood and timber for the home. Don't forget that area now has the septic system's leach field in it. Green manures will be grown in the western portion of Zone 4. We'll include amaranth, comfrey, and hairy vetch. We'll allow those plants to reach their maximum growth and then harvest them for use in the compost throughout the site, or as direct mulch for the areas in the backyard that need them. For firewood and timber, we'll plant 10 thornless black locust trees, which is the Basaniana cultivar, 10 basswood trees, and a small grove of willow shrubs, keeping the roots clear of the septic leach field. The black locust and basswood trees, while they are slower growing, will provide either really good firewood or great timber down the road. They can both be coppiced or pollarded to maximize the yield, and the willow will help get them a yield sooner. It's really a prolific coppicing and pollarding plant. They can also use it for craft material outside of just as kindling for fires. Support species in that area are going to be comfrey. The only activity for Zone 5 is harvesting some of the Amur honeysuckle if they want to use it for kindling. Other than that, it's pretty inactive. We're just going to leave it alone as a good wildlife habitat and letting kind of nature do its thing back there. So here's the typical suburban lot look that this property had before the permaculture design. And here's what you see in total after the design. Thanks a lot for watching the video. If you have any feedback for me, leave it in the comments. If you did enjoy it, consider giving me a like or even subscribing to my channel. I'd appreciate it. This is Mike from Lifelong Abundance saying so long till next time. Take care.